everyone, welcome to episode number 37 of the Build Podcast, and today we'll be going through Jekyll, which is a blog-aware static site generator built with the Ruby programming language. And after we build our blog, we will test it out in our local machine, and then we will immediately host it off the GitHub pages. You'll see that the entire process is entirely easy and most importantly, very fast. So firstly, let's go through the Jackal homepage. The Jackal homepage is really easy, but it has 4 very essential links here, which is code, installation, documentation, other documentation, as well as how do we import from other blogging platforms. So first, let us look at the code, which is basically from the GitHub page. Here you will see essential code that will be relevant if you plan to contribute to the Jekyll open source project. But more importantly, as a user, I find the wiki pages very useful. So the wiki page itself will give us an outline about the various topics that we might want to look through when learning about Jekyll. And lastly, there's this GitHub help page which talks about how we can host Jekyll blogging platform, or rather our blog built with Jekyll with GitHub pages. And finally, as an update to what's going on in the world of Jekyll, I highly recommend following this Twitter, Jekyll RB, to get the updates on what is happening with Jekyll. For example, just a day ago, Jekyll released beta version 3, version 1 beta 3, and this is what we are going to be using. So we are basically working on the cutting edge version of Jekyll, but it will be a lot of fun. So let's get started with Jekyll and build a blog. So the very first thing we will do is we'll come into our command line, and firstly, of course, we will have to ensure that we have the Ruby programming language installed. So for me, it is Ruby 1.9.3. Next, we also have to ensure that the Ruby package manager gem or Ruby gem is installed. So for that, I'll just ensure that gem-v is done. And finally, we will go ahead and install Jekyll. So we'll do gem install and then Jekyll. But because we will be playing around with the beta version, I'll just add in this tag. Now I have already gone and done this, so I'll not execute this command, but for you, please do go ahead and do that. So if you have installed Jekyll and you check the version with Jekyll -- version, and there you go, Jekyll is 1 with beta 3, just as we saw in the Twitter account right here. Right, so after checking the version and making sure that everything is installed properly, the other very common command that we would want to be checking is of course the help command, because this will give us a list of all the commonly used commands that we'll be using for Jekyll. Do note that the commands in the beta version of Jekyll is slightly different from the previous version, and that is why I recommend using the help command and understand what are the new command ways of doing it. So definitely we'll be starting with the new, and then we'll do build or serve, and of course help is something we already did it. So let's get started with Jekyll. So let me just press Q to exit it, come back to our command line. Alright, so the very first thing we will do is create a new Jekyll blog. So to do that, we'll come back to our desktop, which is completely empty as of now, and we'll make an empty directory. And the directory will be typically named as the username .github.com. Why is this so? Because later on, by visiting this URL as well as the name of this GitHub repository, we'll be able to host our code, our newly made Jekyll blog in GitHub pages. So let's see how that happens. Alright, so a new directory has been made. The next thing we will do is Jekyll new, and then the directory name. Right, so looks like the new Jekyll site has been installed, so I'm just gonna get inside and make a list of the files that have been created just with the command Jekyll new. Alright, so that looks good. It has config files, some layout files, CSS, of course blog post itself, images, and then the index.html. Let me just open this up in Sublime Text. So let's firstly go through very briefly some of the structure inside a newly made Jekyll. The very first thing we will see is the underscore layouts. So if we go inside underscore, you'll see default.html, which is basically the default template inside which we will have our content inside and many other variables. Then of course there's post.html, which is the layout for the post of our blog. And next we have underscore posts, which is basically our post. So later on when we will serve it up in our browser, you will see that there is only one post with the title Welcome to Jekyll. And of course there are the static files, which are the CSS and the images. Lastly, there's a config file which we will play with a little bit later on, but basically this will tell us that hey, the markdown parser is called rdiscount and pigments is a type of syntax highlighter. For example, if we come back to our post page, here we will see that here we are writing some Ruby code. This will have some syntax coloring or rather highlighting. So as developers, I'm sure we would want some kind of syntax highlighting turned on in our blog post. And finally, there is of course the index.html. Now, how will Jekyll run our blog? Basically, it will take all this information here and it will create static sites, which means static pages plainly made out of HTML and CSS. So to do that, we will come back to the folder and all we need to do is Jekyll and then build. And when we do that, notice that it will create a new folder called underscore site. Let's have a look at underscore site. Yep, that's a brand new folder here. And once we go inside here, it will look like a plain static website. So it has its index.html and then it has a Jekyll with update, and there you go, the post is right here. So as you go through the folder, this is our post. So why don't we go ahead and look at it in the browser first? So to do that, all we need to do is Jekyll and then serve. With this command, it will instantiate the WebRick HTTP server, and with localhost port 4000 we'll be able to see our blog right in our local machine. And there you go, it's as easy as that. And there is the familiar O1 post, which is Welcome to Jekyll. Let's just click it. And there you go. Here we will see all the folders that we were traversing in the Sublime text. Yep, there you go. And inside that we have our familiar post with the Ruby code and syntax highlighting. That was pretty easy and fast, isn't it? The next thing we will do is host it off GitHub. So to do that, we will come back to desktop and let me just go inside our blog folder with the Jekyll inside it. And next we will do a Git Init repository. So Git Init. Before I'm gonna add everything, let me just create a file called Git Ignore. So usually when we host this site in GitHub Pages, we will not require this underscore site because GitHub Pages will already compile our entire Jekyll blog site and it will create its own underscore site. So let me just go inside Git Ignore and I'm gonna add in site. Now let me just do a git status. And yep, sites is not included here. So now let me just go ahead and add in everything and git commit. Now I'll just call it initial commit. Alright, so that looks good. The next step, we would like to add a remote repository to this Jekyll blog. So to do that, I'll visit github/new to create a remote repository. And inside here, I'll switch to my test account and call it the user account.github.com. And I'll just call it simply blog site. Alright, so naming the repository name in this format is very essential. This has to be the username .github.com so that GitHub Pages can recognize it and subsequently publish a corresponding GitHub page. So let me go ahead and create the repository. Great, so it is obviously empty as of now. So let me go ahead and add the GitHub repository. So git remote add origin and then git put origin master. We have our newly created GitHub repository with a new Jekyll blog. Now let's visit the page, which is the username.github.com, and see what happens. We have a brand new Jekyll page which we served up in localhost just now, but with just a few commands we have it up running for the entire internet to see. Now the first thing you will notice here is that when I click the URL, it will give us some folders like /Jekyll, /update, /date, year, month, and then the blog post. What if you want to customize this? So firstly, I'll come back to my Sublime text and go inside config, and over here I can add in one more configuration. And this time I'll add in permalink / title. This will basically tell us that, hey, whenever we choose a blog post, please give us only the title as the URL. Now, how did I figure out how to do this? Well, inside the wiki pages, once again, there are a handy list of documentation, and one of them I chose is the configuration. This is the documentation for what to include in the _config.yml file. And let me just search for permalink. We can go to the handy permalinks page itself, and there you go. It will tell us various ways on how we can adjust the pretty URLs. Why don't we go ahead and try that in our browser? So to do that, I'll just come back to the web server and I'll just stop it and start it once again. And now when I come back and refresh and visit our first blog post, there you go, it is /title. Let us play around with just one more configuration, and that one is called the destination. So notice when Jackal builds this entire blog, it creates a folder called _site. Now what if we want to change the name? So in order to change it, we can just include a configuration called destination, and I'll do /_. Let's say this time it will be publish. So what's with all this underscore naming convention? When Jekyll will go through all the folders, it will exclude these underscore named files, and it will include the rest of the files inside _site. Notice here, apart from the sites, I have the very familiar _publish folder, which I have defined in my config. Obviously, this will not be used, so we can safely just delete the _sites file. So from now on, all our Jekyll build files will be inside the folder _publish. Next, just to understand how the entire thing works, why don't we go ahead and create a brand new post? So for this, I'll create a new file and I'll follow the naming convention right here, which is, and then I'll just say hello.md for markdown. So let me just go back to our previous one. So here you see there are some meta information right at the top, so which I'm going to include here as well. So layout is post. The title, I'm just going to say hello. The date, yep, that looks good. And categories, maybe no categories for me. Right, so that looks good. So I'm going to come back to my command line, exit the server, and serve it up once again. We should see 2 blog posts here and one including hello. Let's go ahead and click that. And there you go, we have it in the markdown styling. So at this point, you might be wondering that, hey, I already have a blog on another platform. Wouldn't it be nice if I can import them? Well, I found this WordPress to Jackal exporter, so let's go ahead and use that. The very first thing you will need to do is copy these 2 files into the plugins folder of WordPress. So I'll go inside here and installed plugins. So this is my build podcast WordPress admin. And over here, yep, WordPress to Jackal exporter has been installed as a plugin. Now if you go to tools, you will be able to see export to Jackal as one of the options. Let's go ahead and do that. And there you go, in my desktop I have our Jackal blog and of course the Jackal export. So let me just unzip it, and there you go, you will see familiar _posts. And if you go inside here, wow, there are all the posts here which have been converted to markdown. So that looks pretty good to me. So all I need to do is copy all these markdown files and come back to my newly created Jackal blog and paste them here, something like this. So yep, that is how easy it is to convert, or rather export, from WordPress to Jackal. So now let me just stop the server and restart it. Now you might have this error that is having an invalid byte sequence in US ASCII. So to do that, you can easily change the locale settings. So I'll just set the C type as this, and I'll just set the language as this. So let's just try once again, Jackal serve. Right, so that looks good. And I'll go to my browser and refresh it. All the build podcast previous posts have been imported, and there you go, we have the entire blog post in no time. So let me just go ahead, let's say click a very old episode, web fonts. Yep, There you have the show notes. Even the links are all working. Alright, so at this point you might have noticed that wouldn't it be nice if I have some kind of pagination, like it's like really a long list of things. So let's go ahead and explore pagination. So pagination is an interesting bit, and we also have a wiki documentation page on it. All you need to do is include this pagination in our config.yml file. So I'm just going to copy the configuration, so pagination, and let me just switch to the config file, which is right here. And after the destination, I'm going to paste in pagination. This time, why don't we try 10? Now, this is not enough. We will also have to change the view file slightly. Now, this is very well explained in this wiki documentation itself. So I'm going to go to the index.html and copy paste the entire thing. Next, I will go to index.html and paste it right here. So I'll just say Jackal blog. And of course, the layout is default as it is found in the underscore layouts folder. And now when I refresh it, notice that it has a list of all the posts. And right at the bottom, you even have pagination, which is next. And then it will go to number 2, which will also have another set of 10 blog posts. And then when we go to the next one, notice how the URL is changing. So at first it was page 2, then page 3. And of course, let's just come back to page 2 once again. And now when we come back to page 1, notice what happens. It will give us an error. So the Jackal pagination document already recognizes this. So as it is noted here, the above code will not work when a link is produced with the form /page1. So for this, let's do this for the pagination code. So I'm just going to copy this one once again and go inside index.html, the pagination links. So instead of this little code, which is very short the previous time, I'm just going to paste it with the new one. So notice here once again, I am inside the localhost 4000. And there you go. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. So let me just do next. And can I go back to previous? And yep, if you see here, previous makes us go back to the root URL. So that looks all good. Now, wouldn't it be nice if we don't have the long post right in our root URL? So yep, we can do that. For that, we will need to read the Ruby code itself. And there you go. This is the content. So I'm just going to remove the content, which I do not need. I have a list of 10 posts with only the titles, little pagination at the bottom, which we can obviously style and customize it. Maybe if you don't prefer each page number, we can even remove it. But more importantly, it is a neat set of just 10 blog posts, and then we can go previous or next. We can even click one blog post by itself and come to the relevant blog post. And finally, we will just add a couple of things to our blog. So firstly, let's explore with plugins, and through this, we will add a sitemap. So if we go to the plugins documentation, it tells us clearly on how to install it. And one of them we'll be looking at is the sitemap. So let me just go ahead and search for it. There you go. I will take this one, sitemap.xml generator. And so let me go ahead and download this and unzip the sitemap generator zip file. And inside the zip file, you'll find the README file, which we will obviously not need, just for reference and understanding. And I'm going to copy this sitemap generator.rb, come back to my Jackal blog folder, and inside here I'm going to create a new folder called underscore plugins, and inside here I'm just going to paste it. So once again, if we come back to our Sublime Text editor, here we will see the file, which basically gives some instruction on how to generate the sitemap. So there you go. We will need to change some configurations right here. So obviously we can edit the my URL accordingly. So it should be .github.com. Sitemap name, yep, it can be sitemap.xml. Exclude file. Later on, we will be creating a feed file, and I'll be calling it feed.xml. Right, index. Yep, that looks pretty good to me. So notice here in our publish folder, we do not have any sitemap.xml. So let me just restart the Jackal server. And once we do that, there you go, a new sitemap.xml has been created. And of course, looking at the plugin documentation, there are other lists of plugins as well. For example, there's one on Flickr, or like logarithmic tag cloud, of course the sitemap generator, URL encoding. So do go ahead and give some plugins a try. Lastly, as an example, I'm going to show you some other Jekyll hosted blogs. For example, one of my favorite is csswizardry.com by Harry Roberts. As you can see, it has a very similar style with the date and the post, and then he has used paginations right at the bottom to go previous or next. And this is the GitHub repository. As you can see, the username and the repository name has to be username.github.com. The good thing about hosting your blog as Jekyll and in GitHub and GitHub Pages is that all your posts are there for anybody to see, and more importantly, somebody can even spot error and raise an issue. And finally, I wanted to show you Tom Preston Warner's, the creator of Jekyll's blog. As you can see, it also has very similar outline, and of course he's using the default Jekyll theme. But here's some interesting thing over here. There is also an RSS feed that is automatically being detected. So let's go ahead and implement that. And just for the sake of curiosity, yep, this is his GitHub hosted blog page. So firstly, we will go ahead and create a file called feed.xml or atom.xml, whatever you wish. And I found this little code snippet that can be used as a template. So I'm just going to copy the entire thing here, come back to our Jekyll blog folder and create a new file and call it feed.xml. And let me just paste it right here. Obviously, we will have to go through line by line to see what is relevant for us. For example, the title here needs to be changed accordingly. And of course, the link reference as well. So for me, I'll just put in the GitHub Pages URL, and there you go, it is atom. And reference, yep, this will also change. So I'll just change it to github.com/feed.xml. And so that it's a little bit easier to edit, I'm just going to find example.com all across, and I'm just going to replace it with the GitHub page name. Right, save. So that looks good to me. So let me just go ahead and serve up the Jekyll page once again. And now when I visit my blog in localhost, obviously nothing had changed. But next, if I visit feed.xml, yep, there you go. It is giving me the RSS feed. But it will be really nice if it can be automatically detected. So for that, we have this little code snippet here, how to automatically detect RSS feed. So I'm just going to add this to our index.html page. So for that, I'll go inside default, and inside the head tag, maybe after the title page, I will add in the little snippet for RSS auto detection. Obviously, my name is feed.xml and not rss.xml. So that looks pretty good. So now when I refresh the page, notice here it is automatically being detected, and when I click here, yep, it brings me to the RSS feed page. So looks like I did a lot of changes, but obviously nothing is detected in the website for my friends to see. So all I need to go is go back to the terminal and push it to GitHub. So I'm just gonna git committed changes, and I'm just gonna git push it. And there you go, all the changes are being reflected. It's as easy as that. As soon as the GitHub repository detects a change, guess what? The GitHub Pages also does the change accordingly. As a final note, let's say you do not really want your blog to be hosted as a subdomain under github.com. Yep, a custom domain is available. So let's look at CSS Wizardry, how Harry Roberts have done it. So it's really easy. All you need to do is include a file called cname. Let's see what's under this file. Yep, there you go. All you need to do is write in the domain name. So let's go through very briefly some links that will help us in understanding Jekyll very well. One of them is called Jekyll Bootstrap, which basically helps us install a lot of the basic things for Jekyll. So do go ahead and try that out. The next is Octopress, which is built on top of Jekyll. And of course, for this episode, you will need some prerequisites for Git, GitHub, and And I also wanted to point out that I previously went through Nanoc, which is another static site generator built with Ruby. Finally, for the build link of the episode, it goes to Code School. That's right, Code School, Learn by Doing. It's created by the people from Envy Labs, I believe, by very talented Greg Pollock and the team. And I really loved watching their videos, some of them that were free as well as some paid ones. They are really good. They will make you go through some coding challenges, screencasts, and there are really a lot of courses as well. So let's go through the courses. There are Ruby, JavaScript, or even iOS and HTML and so on and so forth. So do go ahead and sign up for Code School and learn more about web development. And for all other episodes on Build Podcast, you can visit build-podcast.com, or you can choose some of your favorite ways to watch the episodes every week. Goodbye, and I'll see you next week.